Hey everybody, I've got some good news for you. I know the last couple of lectures have been really pretty tough. It's really the heart and the meat of the science of meteorology that you need to know for this class. Now, I really want you to make sure you understand that to the best of your ability to know what causes certain things in terms of temperature, relative humidity, moisture, winds, that kind of thing. But what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be applying a lot of this information. So what we're going to do today with this lecture is it's going to be a whole lot easier on you. So if you were able to make it through that first unit really well, I think you're going to be much better as time goes on. So I'm going to share the screen here. We're going to be talking about a lot of the stuff going on with the National Weather Service. So I'm going to go ahead and share everything. I guess we can do it this way. And as part of the worksheet, this is the web page that you would have gone to. And I want to go through here and talk a little bit about this. Before I do hit this information, I do want to talk a lot about what's going on with the Weather Service, okay? Now, you're going to be doing your paper, and I made very important requirement that you had to do something from the United States. And the reason is you have to understand how the National Weather Service disseminates, gives out information to the public and about what they're doing, about what their reasoning is, about what kind of products are going to be there. So we're going to start with a look at the National Weather Service, which is a federal bureaucracy, and where this comes from. Now, all of this is going to be under NOAA. Okay, so really what it is we start with NOAA. Now, I'm not going to write this down. You're going to write it down. NOAA is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And that is sort of the overarching branch that covers the National Weather Service. So NOAA is the big thing. And if you look at NASA, that's an administration. If you look at anything that deals with oceans, we're talking about what's happening with NOAA. So this is really important. This is actually under the auspices of the executive branch under the Department of Commerce. So it's actually the DOC is who's in charge of this thing. Then we go to NOAA, and then we kind of step down the line to the National Weather Service. Now, the National Weather Service, and I'm going to kind of draw it this way, I think this might be a way to do it, is that I want you to look at two areas with the National Weather Service. And the first one are going to be national or, let's spell it right. I mean, I did spell it right. National or regional offices. Okay, so we're going to just do it like this. I don't think it needs to be that, doesn't need to be that big. Let's go to that size. National or regional offices. And if we have that, we're going to be talking about that quite a bit. So that's going to be one segment of the National Weather Service. The other segment of the National Weather Service are what we call the WFOs. And that stands for the Weather Forecast Office. So I'm going to show you a little bit what I mean about the WFOs in this situation. These are what we would call the local office. So I'm going to pop over here just for a second. I don't care that that is there. I said if we looked at the text page, we said here's the WFOs, the Weather Forecast Offices. Okay, and so what we're saying is that each of these areas is the local office. And each local office is going to give out a bunch of information. Now, just so you know, we're kind of looking at this like on the day that I'm doing this, there's a beach hazard statement. So we've got some winds coming across the lake. It's going to be causing some bad conditions for swimming, maybe rip currents. But we get discussions. Anytime you see the word discussion, you should write this down. Discussion is an explanation of what their reasoning is. So a discussion is very scientific. It gives you a reasoning why they're doing a forecast. You might look at something like a zone forecast for Cook County, that kind of thing. If you go to hazardous, right, here's a whole bunch of the things that we're going to be looking at. These are all put out by the local office. Tornado warnings, special weather statements, severe weather statements, flood outlooks, flood warnings. And then we've already talked about this. This was on your test about the hazardous weather outlook. So it says, hey, what's the hazards this week? Well, there's a high swim risk. And that's going to be true Saturday as well, and then there's thunderstorms some other days next week. So we're just looking at the next 7 days with the hazardous weather outlook. So all of that is coming from this local forecast office. But I want to take a look at some of the national or regional offices. So we do have a number of smaller regional offices. So the local offices are built into like the eastern region. I don't care that you need to know that. That's just a governmental structure. But there are offices that are going to be super important. So I'm just going to kind of list them here. The first one is the NHC. And the NHC is the National Hurricane Center. That's in Florida. Almost everything that deals with tropical storms and hurricanes is coming from the National Hurricane Center. So we'll get some of those products coming up. We also have a very important one, SPC. That's the Storm Prediction Center. They're the ones that are issuing severe thunderstorm watches or tornado watches. They're also putting out convective outlooks, a forecast, that kind of thing for severe weather. We also have RFC, which is the River Forecast Center. So these are areas that are concerned about issuing advisories and giving a forecast for how rivers are going to behave. We have the WPC. This is pretty interesting. This is a national one, just the Weather Prediction Center. So they'll help local offices give national guidance. Rather than having a small area, it covers the entire United States. We also have tsunami warning centers. Okay, so there's one in Hawaii and there's one in Alaska. Now, tsunamis are not meteorological, but for some reason, the National Weather Service is in charge of these tsunami warning centers. We have a couple of other ones that deal with aviation meteorology, that deal with ocean prediction, the Ocean Prediction Center, the OPC. But these are the ones that you really need to know. These are the ones that are going to matter a lot. So we're going to start with those ideas as the regional offices. And you're going to be responsible for knowing what products come from what offices, whether they're regional or national, or they're coming from the local WFO, okay? So we can go ahead and close that. And so as I go through this page, we're gonna talk about who does this, okay? So first of all, we talk about WAWA, WWA. I know some of you typed it WAWA, but it's Watch Warning Advisories, or whatever order you wanna think about. So the watch is what I want to start with. And in general idea, a watch says that the conditions are favorable for something. So a watch is really a forecast. If I give you a tornado watch, that's like a 6 to 7 hour forecast of we think tornadoes are going to happen. If we have a winter storm watch, that might be in the next day or so, depending on how far in advance we're going to do this. If we have hurricane watches, those go 36 to 48 hours. Now, as it gets closer, we now have either an advisory or a warning. And the key word here is the word imminent. Imminent means it's happening right now. If you get an advisory or a warning, it's because the weather is imminent. So what I want you to do is go look up a definition of the word imminent so that you know exactly what I mean by that. Now, warnings are imminent, and they're the worst because there's life-threatening situations. If I gave you a tornado warning, it's because tornadoes are coming and tornadoes can threaten your life. If I give you a winter storm warning, we're looking at potential problems that could cause problems with your life. People getting trapped. It could be winter storm, ice. It could be super cold weather that could end up killing you. Advisories, on the other hand, are imminent, but they're not as life-threatening. They're usually more of a nuisance, of an inconvenience. People could die in advisory, but it's not as bad as a warning. So if I take a look at 4 words, and this is going to be on the FEMA test, so write this down. We start with outlook, which is a long-term forecast. We have a watch, which is a shorter forecast. Then we have advisories and warnings. Advisories and warnings are both imminent. Warnings the worst. It's life-threatening. Okay? So a couple of other things that I want to talk about with this page is we've already mentioned the hazardous weather outlook, so there's your definition of what that is. But there's something called a special weather statement, and it's there to give you some input about things that aren't meeting any criteria for watch or for warnings, but they could still have impact on you. So, for instance, a severe thunderstorm, as you'll see, is 58-mile-per-hour winds, let's say 60-mile-per-hour winds. If we have a special weather statement, we might say, hey, there's a thunderstorm with 45-mile-per-hour winds. It's not severe, but it is something that you should be aware of, okay? So that's what a special weather statement does. Now, key thing here is a special weather statement, or what we call SPS, is before a before a warning. SPS is before warning. Sometimes, if a warning has been issued, they will issue a SVS, a severe weather statement. Now, a severe weather statement is after warning. So let's take a look at a situation, maybe when it comes to severe weather. So I'm going to go up here to severe weather. I'm going to skip over winter for now and talk about what a severe thunderstorm is. And you need to know these criteria. Winds are 58 miles per hour or higher. Hail is 1 inch in diameter, that's the size of a quarter, or larger. And a severe thunderstorm could also be a tornado. But if it's a tornado, we'll issue a tornado watch. But severe thunderstorms are damaging winds, large hail, tornadoes. That's what makes it a severe thunderstorm. You definitely need to know that. All thunderstorms have lightning. Lightning is dangerous, but that's not what makes it severe. Some thunderstorms could create flooding. Flooding gets a special statement all by itself. But a severe thunderstorm is high winds, damaging winds, large hail, or a tornado. So let's say that you wake up one morning and you look at the hazardous weather outlook, says, hey, we have a chance for severe thunderstorms later this afternoon. Okay? Be alert for changing conditions. Okay, now you know. Now, what you're going to do is you'll hear that the Storm Prediction Center has issued a tornado watch. Okay, that means what? I'm expecting thunderstorms to develop that could be severe, and some of those thunderstorms may produce tornadoes. Okay, it's a forecast. It just means look out for severe weather, for tornadoes in the next few hours. Okay, let's say a thunderstorm develops out in, excuse me, I've got something scratching my eye, so it's bothering me today. Let's imagine that I've got a thunderstorm that's forming out in Kane County, moving toward DuPage County. And it's like, whoa, that's a pretty strong thunderstorm. So you might say the National Weather Service in Chicago has issued a special weather statement. And they'll say in that special weather statement, remember, this is before a warning, hey, there's 50-mile-per-hour winds and hail the size of marbles, half-inch diameter hail. Remember, tornado watch is in effect, and severe thunderstorms can and occasionally produce tornadoes. Okay, that just means you have a strong thunderstorm. It's not criteria, it hasn't been met for a warning. But let's say it gets stronger. Then they say, okay, the National Weather Service has issued a severe thunderstorm warning. Okay, the local office issues the warning for thunderstorms. The National Storm Prediction Center, SPC, issues the watches, and you need to know the difference. Okay, then maybe there's a tornado that's been spotted, and they'll say, we're upgrading it to a tornado warning. Tornado has been sighted, or radar has detected a tornado, something along those lines. Let's say it comes into DuPage County and it starts doing damage. Somebody reports it. Now you're going to say a severe weather statement. At 4:15, trained weather spotters indicated a tornado on the ground doing damage. Okay? There's already a warning out, but now they're saying, hey, it's been verified. So that's what we call a severe weather statement. And there's a lot of things we can do that. Now, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if there's anything going on today. It's really not. But I can look at another one here. So maybe here's a severe thunderstorm in Oregon. Notice there's the warning. And then here's the products for that. There's the warning. And we might say a severe thunderstorm warning remains in effect. And notice they call this a severe weather statement. So they're just clarifying. Remember, the Weather Service wants to give you as much information as you can get, okay? Now let's go back to here. If the tornado is possible, then we're going to probably issue a tornado watch. You still could get hail and damaging winds, but tornadoes are also likely. Now, there's a couple of things that I want you to know, okay? So we're going to see on a test if you paid attention to this lecture. There's a slang name for a severe thunderstorm watch, and that's called a blue box. Typically, when we issue a watch, you can show you where it is, and we'll use the color blue. I think the Weather Channel uses yellow. I don't like that. So it's a blue box, and that's the slang name, and you need to know that. Well, what do you think the slang name is for tornado? And yeah, it's a red box. Okay, so again, I'm going to go over here for a second, look at hazards. And if you, as this loads, take a look, there's no severe weather. There's actually winter stuff. This is June 12th, in case you can't tell this. And there's frost advisories for upper Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Michigan. But notice, tornado warning is this bright red. The tornado watch is this red. So that's a red box. Severe thunderstorm watch would be blue. Okay, and we're going to take a look at all these coming up. Okay. One other thing with this is sometimes you'll call something a PDS, and you need to know what PDS is. It's a particularly dangerous situation. Okay, so particularly dangerous situation. So severe weather, watches, Storm Prediction Center. Outlooks, Storm Prediction Center. Warnings, local office. They're monitoring for the local area. Okay, I'm going to look at one more thing here. And I'm just going to show you that the Storm Prediction Center issues watches. They also have discussions on that. It's like they update information if they're going to issue a watch. So notice they don't have, the warnings are going to be out of the local weather office. So these are all out of the different local weather offices. The watches come from SPC. They also do outlooks, which we will talk about in the thunderstorm section coming up next week. Okay? Now, let us switch to winter. All winter WWAs, all watches and warnings especially, are coming from the local forecast office. So that's important to note. So what are they? Well, let's take a look at the ones that are advisory level. First one is dense fog. Okay, dense fog is a reduction of visibility under a quarter mile. Now, can people die in it? Sure. If they crash their car because they drive into somebody else, that's bad. But a dense fog is advisory. There is no such thing as a dense fog warning. There's dense fog advisories. Freezing rain can get advisory if it's less than a quarter of an inch anticipated. If it's more than a quarter inch, and we'll see examples of this where you're bringing down power lines and trees and causing power outages, then you call it, you don't call it, excuse me, a freezing rain warning, you call it an ice storm warning, okay? Again, all this local office. You can get winter weather advisories. A couple of inches of snow, hey, it's gonna be dangerous driving, slow down, be careful. That's an advisory. If it gets worse, then it's gonna be a winter storm watch or a winter storm warning. Again, all of this is issued by the local office. Okay, so depends on where you are. If you're in the mountains, it's a lot different than if you're in like Birmingham, Alabama, because they don't get snow that often. But if you want to know, this is what we typically are for Chicago. 4 inches of snow or more in 12 hours, or 6, 7 inches in 24 hours. Or ice accumulations, or damaging combination of snow and ice and wind and stuff like that. That's just, there's winter weather coming, it's a winter weather watch. Then when we go to the winter weather warning, then we can call it whatever it is. If it's all ice, we're going to do it as an ice storm warning, okay? Now there's something else, blizzard. Blizzard is additional, that's additional hazard because this is restriction because of wind, blowing snow. It's a reduction of visibility. That's what makes a blizzard. So does it have to snow during a blizzard? No, it could just be snow flying through the air. Or it doesn't have to accumulate much. You could still have a blizzard if it's windy and you can't see. But you could have a blizzard warning and a heavy snow warning. and then you have a real mess. That's what the Groundhog's Day blizzard was. You had heavy snow, we had almost 2 feet of snow, and you had blizzard conditions. I'm not going to worry too much about this stuff, knowing the difference, but it should make sense. A snow advisory rather than a warning is not very much. You can have frost advisories, and that's usually in the growing season. So in the fall, you'll get a frost advisory. And then that's an advisory, but if it's really bad, it's a watch and a warning for freezes. Once you get a freeze warning, well, if you get a freeze, you've killed everything, so you don't have to worry about another one the next night. You've done the damage. Last one is the wind chill. Wind is a convection process. Blowing on your skin takes the heat away from your skin much more rapidly, so sometimes we call it a feels-like temperature. It's actually the wind chill. So there is a wind chill chart. I don't know if this is working. Does it work now? No, it is not found. So what I want you to do is I want you to just go wind chill NWS. And if you go there, you'll find tons of images on this. But the key of this, so I want you to put this diagram into your notes, is just to know how fast do you get frostbite. And you get frostbite within 5 minutes if the winds are strong and the temperature is very cold, and within 10 minutes. And usually if it's within 10 minutes, that's going to get you a wind chill warning. If it's more than 10 minutes, up to 30 minutes, you might get a wind chill advisory. Okay, so put that chart in there. That's easy enough to find. I've got to make sure this link gets fixed. But you have a wind chill advisory and a wind chill warning. You don't get a wind chill watch. Okay, that's just something that happens. I don't make this stuff up. I'm not in charge, or else I would have fixed this by now. Summer, we've already talked about this. We've talked about severe thunderstorm and tornadoes. I want you to say there's something else, and there's a question on one of the worksheets about this. I want it really well answered, your opinion. Tornado emergency. Okay, so take a look at this. I'm not going to mention anything here. I want to know your opinion. We can have winds. We can have wind advisory, right? That's windy. Maybe things get blown over, high-profile vehicles. We can have a high wind. Now you're talking about, destruction, and that's a watch and a warning. We don't get this around here, but you can have an extreme wind warning, 150 miles an hour. Whoa! Like in mountainous areas, we can have that. So. And then we've already talked about the dense fog. So you can go through here and take a look at this. Now, hurricanes, you need to know this. And I'm not going to talk about it much because it's written down here. I just want to point out a couple things. Everything here is coming from the National Hurricane Center, from NHC. And so you have a watch, which is to 48 hours. If it's within 36 to 48 hours, 36 hours or less, then it gets a warning. So that's really what difference. A watch means 36 to 48 hours. A warning means it's under 36. I think it should be longer for a watch. I think we could do 3 days and have a watch, but again, I'm not in charge. I should be, but I'm not. Tropical storm will winds up to 63 knots. Because you're going to have open notes, you just write this down someplace and make sure you've defined it so you can access it. And then a hurricane is over 64 knots or 74 miles an hour, watches and warnings. Okay. There are no hurricane advisories. Now, there's other products that the Hurricane Center talks about. When we get to hurricanes, we will talk about that. Fire weather. Now, here's something weird. Forecasts for fire weather. It's what we call a fire weather outlook. Do you know who does that? The Storm Prediction Center. The fire weather outlook. I don't know why. I mean, I kind of do, but it's still weird that the Storm Prediction Center does fire weather outlooks. But I want you to know that. Storm Prediction Center does fire weather outlooks. Watches and warnings are local office. So the outlook is Storm Prediction Center. You just got to write that down. Watches and warnings come from the local office. So basically we're saying what kind of weather creates a fire hazard. Well, windy, I'm not going to worry about the speed, you can write that down, but windy, low relative humidity, and then fuel moisture. We'll get into this in our fire weather discussion. But for now, that's what it is. That's a watch. It's a fire weather watch. If there's a warning, They don't call it a fire weather warning, but it is. But then the name of it is called a red flag warning, which I think is really cool. So if I go over here, all this orange on this page is fire weather, and I've got red flag warnings for parts of Utah. So let's see what it says about this. It says here that I've got southwest winds 20 to 30 miles an hour, relative humidity 7 to 15%. That's really dry. Gusty winds and low humidity can cause fire to rapidly grow in size and intensity before first responders can contain them. So that's what a red flag warning is all about. They also have a wind advisory. Okay, so it's windy, it's hot, it's dry. So there's a lot of stuff out here. High wind warnings, red flag warnings, wind advisories. It's kind of a mess out there, right? This is all fire weather stuff going on out there in the West today. Okay, go to flood. Now, there's a lot of stuff in here that's kind of confusing. I'll try to clear up what I want you to know. First one is, when it comes to flood, the thing that I really want you to know about is urban and small stream flood advisory. That's just underpasses, water on the road. That's usually not life-threatening, but if you drove into it, your car will probably, you could stop your car. The alternator gets wet and your car doesn't work. So that's just when streets are flooded and you just got to be careful when you're driving. Everything else is watch and warning. All of this comes from the local office. So what I want to talk about is a flash flood watch. That's within 6 hours of whatever's causing it. We're going to get into this in a ton of detail. So for now, just know, whatever causes the flash flood, it's within 6 hours, that's a flash flood. If I think that's going to happen, that's a flash watch. If it is happening, then it's a flash flood warning. And a flood, which is really just a river flood, obviously that takes a much longer time. But a flood watch or a flood warning is issued when you think rivers are going to start to come out of their banks. Okay? So if I go back to this page, I see a bunch of flood warnings along the Mississippi. And there's different stages of flood, and there's different intensities of flood. So we'll be talking about that as we go on in the future. Okay? Now, heat. We have heat advisory. This is pretty straightforward. Heat advisory and then excessive heat watch or excessive heat warning. For Chicago, these are the criteria. It's usually really hot. What else makes people feel bad? Remember, their body sweats, and if it's really humid out, they're not going to cool themselves much. So we're also looking at high temperatures and dew points, and that leads to the heat index, or what we call the feels like temperature in the summer. So when it gets up there to 115 for more than 3 hours, we'll have a watch or a warning, depending on whether it's in the future or whether it's imminent. All of this is from the local weather office. Now there's marine stuff. If you're ever boating or you're on the lake or something, and if I go to this map, there's some stuff on the counties that are put up here. Small craft advisory, you see some of those things showing up, beach hazard statements, right? Oh, sorry. So we have a small craft advisory. It's windy and that causes waves. Not good for small boats, they'll capsize. But then you get stronger, there's no watches, there's just warnings, and you gotta know this. The strength of winds in inland waters and ocean waters goes gale, storm, hurricane. We already know how fast hurricanes are, those are 63 knots. You could get hurricane force winds on a lake. It's not a hurricane, it's just hurricane force winds. Gale warning is first, and that goes to 47 knots, which is a little bit about 50-something miles an hour. Storm warning, which is higher than that, and then hurricane. So here's how I remember this. GSH, if you're a Bears fan, George S. Hallis, Papa Bear Hallis is the owner. The Bears wear the little GSH on their sleeve. Gale, storm, hurricane. From least intense to most intense. Now you do have a warning called a special marine warning, which are really nothing more than severe thunderstorm or tornado warnings over lakes. So it's special marine warning. A couple of years ago, there was a duck boat that capsized, and they had special marine warnings for the lake. So there you go. So you can take a look at this. That's what you've got. And those are the products. Notice almost everything comes from the local forecast office, except severe thunderstorm and tornado watches come from SPC, fire weather outlooks, SPC. All tropical comes from NHC. Almost everything else is coming from the local office. So that's what you need to know. Okay? You need to know your special weather statement. You need to know your severe weather statement. You need to know the slang names and where these offices are coming from. So pretty much, if you've taken good notes on this lecture, right, that's not that hard. I'm not going to test you on anything, but you've got to get used to using that so that you know where it comes from. If I go to this hazards map, right, I like this little map here, and I've given you a link for it. You can take a look right there. If you would like to take a look at this one, let me just go refresh this so that it's nice and large on here. And it's fun. So we can see, oh, lake wind advisory. So there must be some gale force winds on the lakes or high winds. High wind watch, warnings. It's windy out west. We've got some special weather statements. We've got marine small craft advisories and a gale watch. We've got flooding going on. We have air quality alerts. We didn't talk too much about that. Something going off, marine weather statement. We've got flood watches. And then, like I said, it's June 12th, and we're looking at frost advisories for up there in purple. So take a look at this. Orange is going to be fire, winter is purple, marine is blue, tropical is going to be yellow, hydrological, which is rivers or flash floods. There's really nothing major going on except some river flooding is here. Non-precipitation, so maybe dust or winds, and then non-meteorological air quality is really what we're talking about. So if you want to use this page, feel free to use that. We're going to eventually start looking at other things as we go into the specific hazard, but this is just an overview of how the Weather Service deals with their WAWAs, the weather watch, or weather warning, watch warning advisory, however you want to say that. Just remember the order. Least urgent would be outlook, then watch, then advisory, then warning. Okay, warning is the most urgent one. Okay, so take good notes on this. Put it together in something really readable. I don't want to just see it written out in order. I want you to take some time, make it cohesive, put it together, outline it, make it real simple. And then every time I ask you in the future, you know exactly where to look for it, okay? All right, guys, I'm going to stop sharing and stop recording, and I hope you have a great day.